There's something powerful about walking back into the fieldcraft of World War II. Not the grand strategy, not the generals, but the raw tricks ordinary soldiers used just to stay alive, one miserable night at a time. If you've ever wondered how men who had almost nothing still managed to sleep through snowstorms in the Ardennes, monsoon rains in Burma, and endless mud in the Eastern Front, this is where the real story lives. On History Reborn Alive, this isn't about romanticizing hardship. It's about respecting it, studying it, and learning from techniques that actually worked under the worst battlefield conditions imaginable. The next few minutes will take you into the gritty, practical shelter hacks that soldiers developed, not because they wanted to, but because nature forced them to. And the surprising thing is how many of these methods still apply today if you ever find yourself in unforgiving terrain. Whether you're trekking, training, or just building real historical understanding. So let's get straight into the fieldcraft that kept men alive when the weather turned into an enemy of its own. Soldiers learned to bend nature instead of fighting it for wind protection. One of the first lessons World War II soldiers mastered was that wind kills faster than cold. On fronts like Stalingrad or the Hurtgen forest, small patrols often cut trenches into snowdrifts or earthbanks to block wind before even thinking of laying out bedding. They carved out these shallow scoops, roughly body length, angled away from prevailing wind, and then reinforced the top edge with branches, ammo crate planks, or even helmets packed with snow. The result wasn't comfortable, but it stopped the wind from ripping heat off the body. You can apply this today by using terrain instead of gear. If you're stuck outdoors, carve a shallow recess behind a fallen tree, a log pile or a snowbank, then build a minimal lip or ridge to break direct wind flow. It's simple physics and still highly effective. Using ponchos, ground sheets, and anything waterproof became the soldiers' most valuable roof. World War II soldiers didn't always have proper tents, and in wet zones like Italy or the Pacific, they often relied on a basic poncho lean-to. Their method was straightforward. Tie two corners to trees or rifles planted upright, stake the bottom corners low to the ground, and angle the poncho so rain would run downhill. What made their version so effective was tension. They kept the fabric stretched tight to prevent pooling water, which would otherwise soak through. Modern campers still copy this, you know. If you want maximum waterproofing, angle the shelter sharply. Soldiers used around 30 to 40 degrees. And dig a tiny drainage line under the lowest edge so runoff never touches your sleeping area. The ground was the real enemy, so soldiers insulated it using whatever they could scavenge. Cold ground pulls heat faster than cold air, and World War II soldiers quickly learned that sleeping directly on soil, snow or wet leaves was a guaranteed path to hypothermia. They gathered pine branches, brush, hay, newspapers, spare uniforms and even cardboard from ration boxes to build crude insulating mattresses. On the Eastern Front, Soviet soldiers stuffed their quilted jackets with straw during bivouacs, doubling their insulation. This principle still applies today. Before you build any overhead shelter, focus on the ground. A simple step-by-step approach works. Gather a thick layer of vegetation, stack it to hand height, compact it lightly, and lay a final dry layer on top. Even a few inches of insulation can make a double-digit difference in heat loss. In regions where dug shelters weren't possible, troops often built small, shallow fire trenches paired with a reflector wall made from logs, stones, or packed snow. They positioned themselves a metre or two from the trench so radiant heat bounced back toward them instead of disappearing into the night. The trick, they understood, was direction, keeping the fire long and narrow-focused heat toward the sleeper instead of radiating uselessly upward. You can use this same technique during winter outings by building a waist-high reflector opposite your fire and keeping flames at shin height for steady, targeted warmth. It's not about bigger flames, it's about smarter ones. Soldiers who had only a canvas sheet often strengthened it with a single ridgepole carved from local branches. This stiff spine stopped shelters from sagging under snow or buckling in heavy rain. It also helped them pitch stealthier shelters, since a taut roof makes far less noise in wind than a flapping sheet. If you're ever forced to build a quick shelter today, well, you should prioritize the spine. Find a straight branch as long as your planned roof, anchor both ends low, then drape your fabric tightly over it. You know, WWII soldiers often place small cross braces under the middle for support, a trick that still makes emergency shelters far more reliable. Digging foxholes with overhead covers created natural bunkers that honestly stayed dry longer. The foxhole wasn't just for bullets. In winter campaigns, troops deepened their holes, added a raised sleeping bench on one side, and built crude overhead roofs using logs and dirt. This kept rain and snow from melting inside the hole and, well, created a temperature buffer. Soldiers in the Ardennes often paired this with a small drainage channel so water never pooled. The method still works. If you ever need a stormproof shelter and have a digging tool, create a 2-level hole, keep the lower area for collecting runoff, and sleep on the higher ledge. It's primitive, but honestly incredibly effective. Using body heat wisely was a survival tactic, not a last resort. Soldiers frequently paired up or slept closely in shared shelters because, well, conserving warmth was as important as generating it. They understood that even poor materials became efficient when multiple warm bodies shared the same space. This wasn't camaraderie, it was survival math. In modern terms, even when you're camping solo, you can, well, mimic the effect by reducing empty space in your shelter, packing your gear around your sleeping area, and positioning reflective surfaces close to your body to trap warmth. Repairing, tightening, and maintaining shelters every few hours was a real discipline. WWII soldiers routinely tightened ropes, adjusted angles, dug small new channels, or reinforced sagging sections during the night. They treated shelters as living structures that needed constant care. Without maintenance, even the best setup failed under snow or heavy rain. You can apply this mindset today by checking your shelter after temperature shifts, wind gusts, or precipitation. Most failures aren't structural, they're neglect. These WWII shelter hacks weren't theoretical. They were solutions forged by necessity, refined by hardship, and passed on because they worked. If you learned something new and want more deep-dive historical survival content, make sure to subscribe, share this guide, and keep expanding our community here on History Reborn Alive.